How's everybody doing today? When I first started doing these videos, I went to my wife, because I'm smart, and I asked her, hey, hon, what do you think I should do? What type of videos do you think I should focus on? And she said, well, you thought about doing lists. I love watching lists. And I'm like, yeah. You know, the truth is that lists kind of are everybody's thing. Everybody does them, and it seems kind of cliche. And she brought up a couple good points. One of them was that people like lists, and it's kind of hard to argue with that. And the other one was that, you know, early on, it's probably a good idea to let your viewers know, hey, this is the type of content I can expect based off of the interests that he showed me. And I'm like, okay, yeah, that kind of makes sense. Sure, why not? I'll do some lists. And this first list is obviously going to be top 10 video games. Look, these are my top 10. They're not the best 10. I understand that, but one of the neat things about games in general is it's very subjective. What you like is not necessarily going to be what I like, and it's not necessarily going to be what the guy down the block likes. So keep that in mind. This is my top 10. Before I make a list video, though, I need to make some rules. And the first rule is one game per series. I don't want to see this list dominated by one franchise. You know, who wants to turn on a video and see Castlevania 1, Castlevania 2, Castlevania 3, Castlevania 4, Castlevania 5? And if that's my top 10, that's pretty boring, and who really wants to watch that? Number 2 is absolutely no honorable mentions. Look, that's a cop-out. That's a way to say, man, this game's really popular, and I don't really like it that much, but if I put it in the honorable mentions, I won't get as much hate. Look, you say you're going to do a top 10, you do a top 10, and you put your name on it, okay? And the third rule is nothing that's too new. I mean, I kind of feel like these games have to stand up to the test of time before I can say whether it's, you know, one of my favorites or not. Because the truth is, like, I can pick up a game and for 4 or 5 days it can be the funnest thing on the planet, but after 2 weeks I may stop playing it completely. So I want to make sure that this is something that I go back to often and play, or it can't make the list. So without further ado, number 10, Civilization 6. Alright, look, I know I'm already breaking my third rule, but I put in the hours on this game. And to be honest, it was going to be Civilization 4 anyway, but I kind of like 6 better. Having the ability to play that game on the Switch has just elevated it to a completely new level for me. It used to be the game that I'd go into the other room and I'd sit on the computer for hours on end saying just one more turn. And before I knew it, it was, 5 in the morning and I had to be at work in 2 hours. The game just sucks you in. I fully admit that I'm not the best person on the planet at this game. Truth is, I've never beaten any of the civilizations on Deity, and I've been playing since literally Civ 1. I tend to play on very vanilla settings. Civilization 6, I've been playing a lot of Prince, and to be honest, that does the job for me. I have no real desire to go up any higher and make things any more difficult than the game already is. Now, if you've never played a Civilization, it's pretty simple. You start out basically at the beginning of the time, and you have a god complex. Then you decide exactly what buildings are built in each one of your cities, where you're going to place your cities, what scientific research you want to look into, and how you want to evolve your culture. A in-game scoring process that comes up with a score based off of how you play. Now, you can go all risk and just destroy everyone and win the game that way as well. Or you can do it via science or culture, or even you can go ahead and win it at the United Nations. There's a lot of different ways to play the game. Each civilization itself within the game has their strengths and weaknesses, and you have to base your play off of the strengths and weaknesses of each civilization. Look, I love the game, but it is challenging, and it's worth the time, I feel, to really dive into it, and before you know it, you too will say just one more turn. Number 9, Mike Tyson's Punch-Out. Say it with me now, 007-373-5963. That's the code to Tyson, and quite frankly, you're going to need it. This is one of the more difficult games that Nintendo put out there, but it doesn't make the game any worse. The game is still great. It's truthfully a puzzle game wrapped in the shell of a boxing game. Once you get your grasp around the idea that, okay, they're going to throw certain punches at certain times, and as long as I don't get hit, it's not going to mess up the pattern, you can actually rip through this game pretty quickly. But it's not easy. Yes, I've beaten Tyson before, beaten him multiple times. I may actually do a video at some point explaining how to beat Tyson. But there's a bunch of them on the internet already, so I don't know if I'm going to do that or not. You start off as Little Mac, as I'm sure most of you already know, and you travel through a bunch of racist competitors. I don't really have a better way of saying it. Like, there's a lot of stereotypes in this game. The Asian guy, I mean, he's clearly Asian. The French guy, he's clearly French. And that's kind of the way it is for every character, so it's acceptable for 1987, not for 2022, by any stretch of the imagination. But the gameplay is so solid, so worth playing. If you've never picked up Mike Tyson's Punch-Out, look, get yourself an emulator or something and go play it. You can get Punch-Out on the Switch, but that game just feels different to me. I like Mike Tyson's Punch-Out a lot better. Maybe it's a nostalgia thing. I don't really know, because truthfully, all they did was a palette swap. But it just feels different to me. Beating Mr. Dream is not beating Kid Dynamite. The other fighters in the game, they are memorable, though. Whether it's Clash Joe, King Hippo, Soda Popinski, or Bald Bull, you will remember these people, and you will remember the over-the-top characters that they are. If you can, pick this up, give it a shot. Number 8, Vagrant Story. When people used to ask me what this game was about, I would just laugh and say, oh, you run around and kill Christians. And that's not too wrong, but it's not right either. You kill a lot of evil things as well. You're kind of Switzerland with a bad attitude, you know, right there in the middle. The combat system in this game was, we'll say, ahead of its time. You can chain combos to 1,000 hits if you're good enough to do it. You'll have to be frame perfect on those last, 900, but it can be done, and it's actually a strategy that you must utilize to complete the game. The weapons that you use, you have to build those. You're not going to buy them in a store. What you're going to do is you're going to kill things, you're going to get materials, and with those materials you go to a workshop and you put things together. Sometimes what you put together will be better, sometimes it'll be worse, and you can even be using better materials to put those things together, and it still may end up worse, because the thing you built before was perfect. The spells that you use, while somewhat necessary, you may find yourself not using them much at all, especially on the 3rd or 4th playthrough. And that's the thing where this game really sucked me in. There's a point system, they call it a risk breaker system, and every time you go through the game, you get points. Based off of those points, that's how you gain levels. And you can reach a point where you get, grand risk breaker, I think it is, which is like 25, that's maxed out. You're going to have to play through the game multiple times to get that. And if you're a completionist, oh my god, this game will give you time. The story itself is pretty damn good. You're sent in to investigate a situation and deal with a problem. And you find out that you were part of the problem to begin with. You don't waste any time, and anybody that gets in your way, they become the new problem. So you're kind of a killer without a cause in a way, but you do have a cause because you are part of a group and was sent here to do this. Look, there's a bunch left to this game that I could explain, but I think I'll do a video at a later time. If you can get your hands on this, I can't recommend it more. Number 7, Mega Man 2. Who doesn't love the Blue Bomber? I mean, seriously, it's Mega Man. Most people I know, they're torn between Mega Man 2, Mega Man 3, or Mega Man X. To me, it's always been Mega Man 2. It's the one I had as a kid. And if you don't know what a Mega Man game is, where have you been? What you do is you fight a bunch of robots, each robot gives you a power-up, and then you go fight the next robot. Once you learn the pattern of which weapon kills which one, you can pretty much breeze through it. It's good old platforming, shoot-'em-up fun. Now, that's not to say that there aren't things in there that'll drive you nuts. The disappearing blocks, yeah, the disappearing blocks, they will drive you bonkers, but outside of that, I think this game is as close to a perfect NES platformer that there is. And the music, oh my god, the music. I love the music to this game. If you've never played this, it's worth it just for the music. Heck, the title screen alone, man, it absolutely slaps. There's no other way of putting it. So gear up and go beat Dr. Wily, because he needs to be taken down. Number 6, Assassin's Creed Black Flag. This, unfortunately, is where the Assassin's Creed franchise peaked. I liked every one of the games between 1 and this. Since then, not so much. I mean, they're okay, but they just don't feel the same. there's one complaint about this game that I will listen to. It's that they could have added more parkour to it. But they got so much right that it's hard to listen to that too much. Whether you're on the ship listening to shanties that you will find yourself singing along with, there's just no way around it. Or you're in a war with somebody while on the ship, blowing up forts and everything else. Or you're island hopping from one island to the next and discovering everything that's on it. This game just has so much to offer. It's unfortunate to see where Assassin's Creed has gone since then, and while Valhalla has been okay, it's still not on par with what the old Assassin's Creeds were, and that's kind of sad. So, what is an Assassin's Creed if you've never played one? Well, you are in the future, and then you have to go to the past to get some item that's magical or mystical or something, and then you get said item, and the game is over. That's pretty much the formula for every Assassin's Creed. The thing that helps Assassin's Creed is the gameplay itself and the controls. The parkour, like I mentioned earlier. Assassin's Creed parkour is wonderful once you get it figured out. They can put it on rails at times and make it too easy, but you don't want it to be too hard either. I mean, if you want that, you go play, I believe it's called Mirror's Edge. That's a tough parkour game. This game strikes that balance in the middle to where a casual player can pick it up, do all the parkour, have all the fun, and there's other elements to it. I love this game, and it's really sad to see that they haven't been able to repeat it. Number 5, Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past. Yep, this is my choice for the Zelda game. You gotta understand that a 10-year-old me got this game and was like, this is what a Zelda is. With the top-down view, the sprites were absolutely beautiful, and the game's still fun to this day. I think that this is the best Zelda game that they've ever put out. That's not to knock the other ones. Breath of the Wild was absolutely great, but this was my Zelda. Whether you're using the spin attack, the dash attack, the sub-weapons were so good, and the dungeon crawling. That's a part that Breath of the Wild was missing to me. I miss dungeon crawling. Like, that is, to me, what a Zelda is. You know, you go into the dungeon, you get the sub-weapon, you kill the boss at the end. Collect all the pieces of the Triforce, or whatever, and you can get through some magical barrier that's keeping you from killing Ganon. This had all that in spades. Now, I may be looking at this through nostalgia-colored glasses, and that's cool, because nostalgia is part of what makes us enjoy these things. Years later, I look at this, and I'm just like, this game is still great. I could have easily put the original Legend of Zelda as my choice, because that game's up there, too. There's just so many good Zeldas. The story is simple. You end up having to save a bunch of maidens. The maidens will break the barrier, and then you go in and you kill Ganon inside of a pyramid. But you'll have to hop between the light world and the dark world to do it. This was kind of first quest, second quest-ish, like the original Zelda was. So there was nostalgia on top of it, even then. Look, I love this game. I'm not going to apologize for putting it here. Grab your ROMs, grab your carts, grab your Switch, and give this game a full playthrough. It's absolutely worth it. It's so good. Number 4, Skyrim. Okay, I know that when this game came out, it was a complete bucket of fucks. It was glitchy, to say the least, and I know a lot of people still hate on this game. The thing is, I can't deny the hours I put into it. And the money. Holy Christ, I bought this game more on different systems than I think any game I've ever owned. And I've owned this one quite a few times. It strikes a nice balance. It's good enough that a hardcore RPG player can jump in and be like, yeah, this is alright. But a noob can as well, and I think that that means something. Sure, it is glitch-ridden at times, and sometimes it's terrible, and sometimes it'll even crash your system, but there's enough there to just keep me intrigued. All these years later, we're looking at 10 years, an Anniversary Edition came out, and it sold okay, and that's saying something for a game that old. The story is good enough, and the side quests are good enough. It's funny, there's nothing that this game does perfect, but it does enough things just good enough, and there's enough gameplay to it that it's hard to put down. And the score's great. I love the music in the game. I think that that might be the one thing they did actually get close to perfect. Although at times it is hard to hear because it's so low just as background noise. And that's kind of the right way of handling it, but it's always there. The lore within the game is stupid deep. I mean, there are entire channels on YouTube that are very successful that all they do is go over the lore of this game. So whether you're climbing a bunch of steps to get to the Greybeards or you're bringing a dragon down with a shout and Fusro Da, I mean, come on, that was its own meme. The game is just fun. Number 3, Final Fantasy Tactics. So if you poll people what is the best Final Fantasy game of all time, 99.9% of the people are going to say something completely different than what I just did. And let's be real, 4, 6, 7, and 9 are all masterpieces in my eyes. I mean, I love those games. So for me to put this above those, that says something. The storyline just sucked me in so much on this game, even with the piss poor translation. You know, you start out as the good guy, then you become the bad guy, and then you become the bad guy that's actually a good guy, but then you're a bad guy again, and it just bounces all back and forth because that's the way politics is. And there's a lot of politics in this game. And while the story is just chock full of politics, the gameplay is not. It's a simple grid system where you control up to 5 players, each one with their own abilities, and you can change their abilities based off of experience that you earn in the form of job points. You'll eventually get strong enough to take down just about anything, and some of the boards, strangely, rely completely on RNG. Doesn't matter how strong you get, there are a couple fights that, quite frankly, you gotta get a little lucky. There's an immense cast of characters in this game as well. You can have a party that's huge. You can have a party that's almost all monsters. You can have a party that's all human beings. You can have a party that's mixed and matched. You really get a lot of control in this game, and that helps play into my decision of, I really just love this game. I still play it once, twice a year, the whole way through, and it's not a short game. So to play it that far, it kind of means something. Final Fantasy Tactics, even now, still looks beautiful as well. They use sprite work. It's not the polygons that we got used to during the PlayStation era. And I think that's a good thing. Although the polygons had to be done at some point to perfect what we see now, it was rough back then, and none of those games visually aged real well. And while I said that those other 4 games were masterpieces, this one is a masterpiece as well. I'm really looking forward to Triangle Story coming out because it gives me the vibes of the same thing, but the story has to be there as well, and if it's not, it just won't be as good. I hope all you don't hate me for picking this one instead of one of the other Final Fantasies. And hey, if you're a Final Fantasy VII stan, I'll throw an olive branch out to you. Cloud is a playable character in this game. Number 2, Grand Theft Auto San Andreas. Look, I'm not talking about the remastered version. That thing is garbage. I'm talking about the good old PlayStation 2 Grand Theft Auto San Andreas. The story is unreal in this game. Now, yeah, it's the old school rags to riches story that you got from the first few Grand Theft Autos, but this game just stands out. It's so good. The cast of characters in it, the voice actors in it, unreal. Samuel L. Jackson. I mean, come on, man. Could they do any better? I'm sure you've played it by now, but if you haven't, then, you start out coming home for your mom's funeral, and that's when the shit hits the fan, and before you know it, you're in Vegas, and you're controlling a casino, and you're ready to go back home and stomp some mud holes. Along the way, you're going to come across a crazy hippie, you're going to buy up a bunch of property, you're going to own a ton of cars, and for its time, it was huge. I can remember one of my badges of honor that I had was I beat this game without a book, 100%. And it took some time, but I got it done. And there's enough diversions in this game that there's always something to do. I mean, something as stupid as playing basketball. They put it in the game. They put video games inside the game. I would say that there's more stuff to do outside of the main story than there is in modern GTAs. Now, that's not to knock the modern GTAs. They're good too. I just love this one. I mean, I grew up in the 90s, so the story really resonates with me. And the soundtrack is unreal. Whether you have it on the rap station or you have it on the rock station, heck, even the country station, which it's going to get stuck on from time to time because you spend time in the country, and when you steal a car, guess what channel's on? It's just the way it is. Like, they really put in some thought to that. Oh, he's in this type of neighborhood, so this is probably what those people are going to be listening to. I've played this game a ton. I mean, the hours that I used to put into this was unreal. I mean, we would sit there and smoke a little devil's lettuce, and before you know it, the sun was coming up, and we didn't care. I mean, I would just zone out driving sometimes because it was just that good. Or I'd be spending money at the casinos because why not? Look, if for some reason you haven't played this, I say that you should. But I'm not going to say pick it up on anything because, like I said, the remastered version and all the phone versions suck ass. Number 1, Castlevania Symphony of the Night. We have arrived at video game perfection, at least in my eyes. Look, this game has everything you could possibly want. The music is unreal good. Like, unreal good. The platforming, absolutely perfect. The sprite work, I mean, the game is beautiful, and they did it in a time when they were like, oh, 2D games don't sell, everyone's looking for 3D stuff. They was like, no, we got this. There's RPG elements. I mean, have you ever heard of a Metroidvania? It's because of this game in Super Metroid. It's good. It's really good. And Alucard is, well, he's a bit of a Chad. As you dive through all the different levels that are within this game, each one with its own motif and the perfect music to go with it, I mean, you just can't ask for anything more. The bestiary is expansive. The boss fights are amazing. Difficult at times, but fair. And there's a cheese way to beat all of them, but that's okay as well. The storyline, I think, is one of the more in-depth stories for a Castlevania game that we've ever gotten, as Alucard is coming back to take care of his dad because the Belmonts have somehow disappeared. And then there's the whole second castle thing, where they flip the castle upside down, and you gotta keep in mind, most games didn't have things like this. At the time, when you beat a game, you beat a game. And I know people who thought they beat it, and then they're like, wait, you can do what now? I don't speedrun this game. I play it very vanilla, but I enjoy it. I literally play this game every year, a few times a year. This is my game. And I'm sure when I was getting to number 1, you all was thinking, oh, it's going to be this game. Oh, no, it's going to be that game. And then I said it was this game. So, yeah, this is me. This is my number 1 game. It's Castlevania Symphony of the Night, and it is the best game ever made. If you've made it to this point in the video, do me a favor. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, drop a comment telling me how bad my top 10 list is, because I'm sure yours is probably way different than mine. And that's cool. Like I started out saying, video games should be different. Everything is subjective. What I like may not be what you like. That's part of the enjoyment we get out of these video games. And some of you are saying, hey, I noticed you didn't mention very many Xbox games. Well, the truth is, I've never owned an Xbox. Never really had a desire to. I don't play a bunch of sports games. And I'm not real big on first-person shooters, so I've never had a desire, really, to buy an Xbox. But hey, let me know how I did, and I will see you again next week.